The sprinkler.
Hey, Robert.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Good, yourself?
Good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. I've been looking forward to this because systems thinking is the thing.
Oh.
Don't you agree?
Yeah, it depends what you mean by the thing, but yeah, it's...
There's curiosity. There are meetups popping up here and there. There's even a meetup that popped up in Montreal. That's right. We didn't even talk about this beforehand. Is there still a meetup, a systems thinking meetup in Montreal?
There is.
There
and,
is.
And it is on hiatus right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that, priority-wise, where do we fit it in? Just with everything going on.
Family.
Yeah.
2 kids.
3.
3 kids.
3 kids, 7, 4, and 3.
And you someone running after someone else with peanut butter, you told me before.
Yeah, when I
Yes.
got home and I was happy, I was like, I gotta go.
Gotta go. Saved by the podcast.
But no, I mean, they're pretty much my raison d'être.
Yeah, of
Why I
course.
push on and do this kind of stuff, and it's they're the ones who allow me to do this as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Their motivation.
Yeah, like my family, my wife, my dad are watching the kids tonight, so I can do this kind of stuff.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great. Well, thanks. Thanks for letting your husband and son to go play out tonight
Yes, thank you.
and talk about all kinds of stuff. We met in 2014, I believe.
Yes, I believe it was in June, because it was. Anyways, we were speaking before. I do have somewhat of a memory, and
Yeah.
I remember it was an open space.
Yeah. Agile Open. Yeah.
Yeah, Agile Open with Olivier Gourmand.
That's right, yeah.
And I remember calling my wife and saying, you know what, I think I'm going to be home in a couple hours, because it was the first time that I went to a place and there was no speakers. And it was on a Saturday.
That's right. It was on a Saturday.
My sister was organizing a big car show in Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue.
A big car show. Okay.
Yeah, so old cars, things like that.
Really? Okay.
And so my wife and my daughter, because I only had one at the time,
Yeah.
went out there, and I was like, I'm going to join you a couple hours.
Yeah.
Ended up staying till dark.
Till the end. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, then, well, that's where we met. What was your exposure to agility or agile at that moment?
My first exposure was from a couple of people you might know at a project management conference in Ottawa.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean,
I'm just being
I
silly.
do have my PMP. I will say that.
That's all good. It's all good. I did my PMP training.
Yeah. No, I heard I met Jason Little in the hallway
Really? Okay.
and just passing by, and he was talking about this thing called Agile. I was like, what's going on here? And then later that day, I run in and I met with Mike Edwards.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was giving a talk the next day, and I was like, "Listen, can I pick your brain? Let me take you out for some food." And we went to the hotel or the convention center place to eat, and I, bought him a bottle of wine, and he just talked, and I was just soaking it in, and I was like, "What is this?" And I went back. I remember 2 days later back to work, and I was like, "We got to do this stuff," but I had no idea what this stuff was. Nothing. I think it was 2013.
Okay. So a year later, more or less, Agile Open Montreal.
Yeah.
We met there, started talking.
And you just came back from coach camp, and you were praising it.
Was I? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. June makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because it was like the 17th or somewhere around there.
Okay.
It was like a week. Because
Where was it in 2014? It was in Cornwall back there.
no, I believe it was in Montreal.
No, that was in 11. I organized it, so I remember well.
Maybe Toronto.
It probably. I figure it's probably Toronto. Yeah. Maybe not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's when in 2015, I signed up for Agile Coach Camp.
Yeah. Okay.
And I went there.
And where was it that year?
It was in Cornwall.
That was the first
Yeah.
Cornwall, maybe. Yeah.
And that was where, it was such an amazing experience, eye-opening, because I still didn't know what I was doing, but I felt like I connected.
Mm-hmm.
I felt as though this is where I belong.
Yeah.
And I remember I was a sponge. I ended up following you around because I was like, I have no idea where I'm going, but this guy seems
talk about the blind eating the blind.
no, but I go, this guy seems like he knows what he's doing. And you would be talking to like Andrew. You talk
Love
to
Andrew.
A couple other people. Again, I'm very visual, so I remember their faces, and I was just soaking it in. Like it was such a day where I've met Peter, like people like Peter Lapine,
Okay.
Carlos Olvera. Who else? Mike Bowler.
Okay, yeah.
Ellen, Sue. People that have made such a huge difference in my life. That Jesus.
Yeah.
There's so many people I'm missing, and I'm just, I'm like, I want to say their names, but I can see their faces.
It's like winning an award.
Yeah.
I like to thank all the little people.
Well, it was actually the first. Jesus and I connected really well because I see you have his book on. It was before he wrote his book. Yeah. And
He came by to the podcast.
oh, nice.
Not long ago.
He's a very special individual, and by special I mean amazing.
Yeah, we're publishing it soon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And we actually decided we got picked to do a talk at GOAT in 2019 as a replacement.
You and Jesus?
Yeah, for
Okay.
2015.
2015. What was the topic?
Pivotal points within teams.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, and so no, it was great. And then what I realized then is there's just so much more I need to learn.
Yeah.
And it was interesting on my end. That year, my youngest daughter was born in March, and I'm not afraid to say what I'm about to say because I went through a bit of a dark period in my life.
Okay.
It was like I burnt out.
Really?
Like to the point where I had a team, I was managing them, and I felt like I was in quicksand. Like anything I was doing, and I thought the same skills that I can use that made me such a good employee beforehand, I can just transition that into management.
Yeah.
And I was blind.
Yeah.
And I basically I was really good at firefighting, but it was not sustainable. And next thing you know, I had to take some time off, and I was actually really lucky because my boss at the time still believed in me.
Okay.
And gave me an opportunity to just rediscover and rebuild myself.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
and this is
amazing.
where I went now to start off the journey that I am now.
Wow.
And when I left the company, the impact that he made on me was such that when I was deciding or like to leave the company that I was with, I had to get his approval.
Really?
Yeah, because that's how much he let me be who I was and saw the potential in me. And he told me I had nothing, I owed nothing, and things like that. It was just great to hear.
Yeah.
And I think we're meeting up for lunch soon, just to catch up.
You kept the relationship with that individual.
Yeah, the connections you make in your life are essential. Like, who would have thought that our discussion in 2014 would lead to this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would lead to start talking about systems thinking, to lead to, some of the great, professional moments in my career. And it's just been an amazing journey.
We even had I think maybe a pizza or something in New York together.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, business agility.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And that was really in my soaking period, where I was just going around and I just wanted to soak in information.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to just learn, go around, and just that conference. That was the first one.
It was the first one. It was in January or February, and it was like plus 20.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was fantastic.
We ate. Where did we eat? We ate pizza at.
Just the two of us?
Yeah, the David Letterman studio right next door.
Yeah.
Right on the second floor.
Mm-hmm. Were you with us at the Italian restaurant, maybe the day after?
With Ellen and
the whole gang,
Jeff,
the cool gang. I call them the cool.
Yeah. I was just like, just being around and soaking that type of information is just
it was fun.
a whole surreal. And anytime I can, like Sue Johnson.
Yeah. Can't say enough about Sue.
No, I can't praise her enough. And even her book that she has.
Yeah.
I just sent her a text saying, "Hey, you're going to be a GOAT. Can you bring 5 books?"
Okay.
Because I bought books from her and I give them out as gifts
Oh yeah.
to people like that I've worked with.
What is the title of her book?
She's going to hate me for
Oh,
this.
so we'll find it. Well, I'll put it as and a link underneath in the
It's
description.
two individuals talking to each other. And what I love about the book
it's her logo from It's Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I love about her book is the fact that it's a story, and then there's about it like a little retrospect at the end of the chapters. And so it connects everything.
Yeah.
And and it was funny because when we went to Spark in Toronto, when I went to Spark in Toronto, we had to pick a word that best represented us.
Okay.
And my word was connection.
Okay.
And hers was as well.
There was a connection with the word connection.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. I think I'm remembering that correctly, but yeah, it was good.
The first time I met Sue, I think it's the first time I met Sue. It was at Agile Tour, Montreal, a long time ago. It was done in this small campus of Université du Québec à Montréal, and she, it was probably one of my first sessions that I gave. And as you know, we're very lacking in confidence at that point. But she was sitting in the crowd, and there was maybe 60 people there, and she would be validating with her nonverbal the whole time, validating everything I was saying by her nonverbal. So my confidence level went through the roof because of Sue. It was fantastic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No. Well, it's funny. I saw her at Toronto Agile Conference this couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I saw people like Paul Cavallero. Again, last names I'm not good at them. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but
testing guy,
Martin,
quality guy,
Fernando, all these guys, and they were at Chris and I's talk.
Okay.
And it was I felt more pressure just talking in front of them because I respect them so much as not just what they know, but how they communicate.
Yeah.
The way they can tell a story, the way they can bring you through your thoughts so that you're just they're not telling you what you need to know. They're
nudging you.
Yeah. They're ensuring that, they're giving you just enough so that you're doing the connections. And just talking to them after, and it was funny because I didn't know how they were reacting during the talk, and so I wasn't sure if it was good or bad. And but afterwards they talked and they gave us some good feedback, and they congratulated Chris and I.
Okay,
and we can talk about that a little bit later. But it was. But yeah, this whole craziness is good. And then there was at least a year, or at least almost 2 years, where we kept seeing each other at a ton of different events.
You mean Sue or someone else?
No, yourself.
Okay, yeah.
And you're like, Rob, do you just go to conferences?
That's right. I remember saying that.
You mentioned that to me, and I go, yeah. And I go, I just want to soak things in.
Yeah. Here's the thing. One or not, any of us, I'll speak for myself, you meet new people in the Agile community on a regular basis. And at first, I'm kind of hesitant because I find that a lot of individuals will explore this Agile thing, this thing that I have a passion for, that I base my life on and my business on, and so on and so forth. And name of the company's called Agile Partnership and whatnot. And I meet these new people, or often just there because it's the in thing to do, and I never see them again, and I'm never surprised. So at first I'm always a little hesitant to engage in a meaningful conversation with that individual, because I always have this sense that I'll probably never see them again, and they're going to go back to what they're doing. But I'm so glad that you decided to keep an interest and push very far.
Yeah, I think what connected me, or what really sparked my flame, was the fact that I come from somebody who's very good at getting things done. Mm-hmm. Right, I find ways like just let's figure this out. Let's find ways. Like I'm not a big fan of here's your role, here's your title. Like that's what you're just doing. But I guess I was a nonconformist when I was a project manager. I remember a friend of mine telling me, he goes, Rob, the times we worked together on projects were perhaps, some of the most eye-opening. And he goes, now a lot of times when I work with people who have titles as project managers, they just want things by the book.
Yeah.
Right. And I meant, he goes, with you just, how do we get in a room and just talk about it? How do we get in a room where we can just, figure this out and work together?
Yeah.
And when I was starting to expose to Agile, it connected me to a way of working that made sense. Like, why can't we just get in a room and talk about it? Yeah. Why do we need to read a document? Like, I could care less about reading this document.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to write a 48-page document? I've done it, right? There's, how often are you going to read it? Yeah. But can we just get in the room and talk? Yeah. Right? And so this is where, I got really invested in the values, the principles. And then I was like, okay, what's next? Because it was great, but one of the things that I also want to know is like, how do I connect these things?
Yeah.
How do I connect design thinking? How do I connect lean? Like, what's the bigger picture in all this? And so it's just a rabbit hole.
And one of the answers that you've got so far is systems thinking.
System thinking is a very, and I love using this word and I hate it at the same time, interesting.
It's interesting. What's that? There's a movie when the family said interesting, they got scolded.
Oh yeah.
They had to get. They need to offer better feedback than just interesting.
Oh, interesting.
But I won't scold you. This is not that kind of show.
No, it's actually yes. System thinking is a way of looking at problems, but it actually has taken me like 2 years just to understand what a system is. Just to understand it. I mean, one of the things that I'm really great for is a gentleman named Olivier Gourmand.
Yeah, from Montreal.
Who pushed me to like, hey, put your thoughts down. Let's start this meetup, the system thinking meetup. Yeah. And we did our first one in January. And it forced me to put all the things that I've been reading, learning, attending, speaking with into a comprehensive 45-minute discussion of what it meant.
Okay.
And it really forces you to like take all your concepts that you learn and being able to communicate it to a 7-year-old, 10-year-old, as opposed to, what makes sense in my head.
So I am a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
At a high level, nutshell, what is systems thinking?
Well, first we have to define what a system is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I like using Edward Deming's definition of what system thinking is, and it's a network of interdependent components that work together to achieve the aim of the system.
That's quite.
Yeah. And without
Did
a name,
you read that somewhere?
No, it's a quote for it. You have it up there.
Yeah, we're allowed to cheat on the show.
We are allowed to cheat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's funny is my good friend Chris Chapman, who started up the system thinking in Toronto.
They meet up in Toronto.
Yeah, and he's a big Deming fan as well. He doesn't use the same definition as I do.
No, do you remember it?
Not off by heart, but it's Russell Acuff's version.
Okay.
And he focused more on the I don't know if you have it there, but it's focused more on the interdependence of parts.
Well, he refers to it in his bicycle. So there's interdependence between all the parts of the bicycle.
Yeah. And in order for you to have the system, you have to have three components. You have the interdependencies. Yeah. The components. So that is like the individuals. Yeah. Right. Then you have the interdependencies. So how do they work together? Right. And
the individuals work together.
The individuals work together in order to achieve the purpose of that system.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So you can look at it as like a football team or a hockey team is a system. Yeah. Because they're working together There's different components. They all have their own roles in order to achieve a goal that they've put out.
Is the ice part of the system on for hockey team?
This is where we're going to go a little bit deep, but
We can deep dive for a few seconds.
yeah.
I'm saying the ice.
yeah.
It could be the ice. It could be the rink itself. It could be the roof, the cooling system. It could be
Yeah.
the fans. The fans could be part of the system.
And this is, one of my personal objectives is I used to have to go and really know everything before I would bring it forward.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
If you want to be miserable,
Oh, I know.
that's a perfect
But I
way
was
to get there.
actually not bad at it. But there was a lot of paralysis by analysis in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's changed in a way is, one of the discussions I had in New York, when that first one was with an author there. He wrote the book Sense and Response.
Okay.
Stephen Perry, and he just told me, he goes, it's about how you interpret it, right, and how you apply it.
Yeah.
Right. So how that links back to the ice is that a component that affects the system, right? Then it is a part.
Yeah.
One of the big hurdles that I had to come is, how do you define what's in the system and what's out the system?
I have trouble excluding stuff from the system. I have a lot of issues. I feel, if you go back at a professional setting, if you've had a rough time in the metro, which has been the case this week a few times, that affects the system. You arrive at work a little pissed off. You're not performing. You're not interacting correctly with your teammates. You're short. You're impatient. So on and so basically, the metro system is part of the system. Yeah. So that's why I the weather.
It's part of an input that you can add, and there's
that's what makes it very difficult.
Yeah, and Akoff talks about, so Russell Akoff talks about, how do you define the scope of your system, and because that was a big thing for me. I go, you could just keep going. Yeah. You could just keep going.
Outer space. I mean, we're all space.
Yeah. I mean, a good exercise to do with kids to talk about systems, and how those apply is ask them, draw where the water is going with how the water comes in and out within the toilet.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And ask them to draw it out.
Okay.
Like, where does the water go?
Oh.
Right. How does it come in? Okay. So how does the water get in there? Right. And you ask them to draw it out. Yeah. And what's funny is
you do that with adults in the training.
Yeah. There's an exercise that I do is called "How did you do on the exam?" Right. And
with your kids or
no. With leadership executives. With teams, and it really is a 5 to 10 minute exercise in which you can just go in there and just take a piece of paper and just start it in mid conversation or mid thing, where it really talks about how we think we have more control over the things that we do. How we actually don't have as much control as we do, and how we think of things in vacuums. Right? Yeah. And so when it comes to so to get to the point of how do you define the systems, is you start with what you know, plus one.
And you make it suck less.
Yeah, and then you work on that. And then once you've identified that, you do another plus one. So for example, if you're a software delivery team, right, you write out your process, right? Put it that. Then you see, okay, what are the inputs and outputs, or what are the things that affect the system? Yeah. Just from an external, like one extra layer. And once you've done that, you get to understand that. You get to see that. Okay, I'm ready to go another one. Okay. But where I started, I was like, wow, I can add this, right? And it just, but it gets too much. And it's that's why I like reading about Akoff. And if I have to recommend anybody to think about through a different lens, how to look at management, how to look at how we work, look in Russell Akoff, just his videos. He's from Bell Labs.
Okay, yeah.
Like the stuff that they talk about are the stuff that we're talking about now, and they're talking about that in the 70s, 60s, 80s. Like,
absolutely,
it's the source material.
But it's difficult.
It,
It's easier to optimize locally. Instant gratification.
It is, but once you've encountered it enough time, you get so frustrated that
you plateau so
you
quickly.
have. I worked, I was helping this team, and they basically just optimize a release train, and they put this thing, and they were so proud. Like, have you guys seen that? You've seen the have you guys? Have you seen the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes?
Yeah.
Right. You know how they're so happy. They're things like that. And so when I demonstrated optimizing local versus whole system, I showed them, and they're so happy. And this is what happened with this team. They were so happy about putting this release train every 3 weeks delivery, and it was like a packages on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we're just gonna get these things gone. Right.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, but and of course, me being me, I was like, well, where's the customer? Where and
Are you measuring impact of what you're delivering?
yeah. But what happened is once they started releasing this, the operations team that had to support that says, whoa, our customer is only allowed to release every 3 months.
Yeah, there's an impact right there. Yeah.
But they didn't even, they didn't take that in consideration because they were only looking at what they can do. And so this is where, when you optimize, a section, you're actually sub-optimizing the whole.
Yeah. Okay.
And when you come across this enough, at a certain point, one of my mottos, what's in the way is the way. Like, you got to find different ways around it. You got to figure it out. It's like, I'm not going to go in here and just keep knocking my head on the door. I do that sometimes, not as much these days, but you don't want to keep doing that, right? How do we find those? And this is where I got frustrated and said, in my end, like, there's got to be something that could help us. There's got to be something that will enable us to see these and solve these problems. Yeah. And where I look at agility and agile is it's a component of it.
A component of what? Of systems thinking, or the system?
A bigger thing.
Okay.
All right. And I system thinking is, again, I'm still having a lot of trouble.
But I think you are defining it as you're speaking.
Yes, I am, and this is what's great is we just did a presentation in Toronto, Chris and I, about leading transformations that matter. And we're doing one in GOAT coming up. And this is something, and we were just briefly discussing about it before, about 2 years in the making.
Really?
Just putting our thoughts down on paper. And then when Chris and I decided to do it, we're like, okay, let's do it. And it was about 4 months of almost every week. Once a week, we'd sit down. And then there were some nights, I love Chris. He's a great guy. Yeah. And there's some nights where, I would leave because it made sense in our head, but we couldn't communicate it out. And he has his thoughts, and I'd have his thoughts. And I remember my wife on the couch. I should name her name, Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Yeah. Sue always gets mad when I say my wife. So Jenny was on the couch, and I'm on Zoom and doing this, and we have just one room for to watch TV and do all this kind of stuff. So she couldn't. She's waiting patiently, and I'm just getting frustrated. And she's like, "Why do you do this? Why do you do this?"
Because it's frustrating.
And I go, "It's a challenge. That's what I love about it. It's the challenge. It's so forth." And this is where, when we look at all this kind of stuff, it's just a bigger picture. And one of the things that I've been trying to look at is we have all these frameworks, right? Design thinking, Lean, Six Sigma,
Safe, Less, Nexus, Scrum.
Yeah, Kanban, XP programming.
Don't knock XP programming.
No, I'm not knocking any of it. My issue is not with that, but I just feel there's a bigger thing that connects them all. I just feel like there's an umbrella that looks at it all and says, this is the principles behind all of this, and all of these are just pillars, or they're just a more detailed ways, and here's how they all connect. Right? Like, I spent.
They're often just they are one snapshot of one context of one systems at a certain point in time in some company somewhere. Yeah. I believe Safe was what created at John Deere, I believe.
I'm not sure. Even SAFE, I talk about Deming. They quote Deming a few times, right, in the material. Because I've gone and I looked at all this material, and
if you want to seem credible, just quote Deming.
But what's interesting, I went to a talk called Me versus We, and it was held by Bill Bellows.
Okay.
And and this was Chris who brought him into Toronto, and he really talking about how, we have to look in things from a we perspective.
Okay.
And when we were talking, it got to me where like I need to know more about Deming. And at the time he was a deputy director at the Deming Institute. He's no longer there.
Yeah.
He's doing his own consulting and so forth.
This is in Ohio, I believe, isn't it?
Yes, but he was in Toronto for 2 days to do this. And I asked him the question. I go, one of the big things that frustrates me with all this stuff is, agile, all this kind of stuff is they're great on their own, right, within the context of a certain situation, right? Yet we start to apply it everywhere, right? But what connects it all? Like I'm still searching for that bigger picture. How do I bring that all to a principle, to values? And he challenged me. He goes, look at the system of profound knowledge. Which means? It's a management theory from Deming. Okay. And again, I'm not a Deming fanboy, but I am a big Deming fan. But I'm critical of what he does. That's the other thing. Like one of the questions I asked him, I go, if Deming was alive today, what issues would you have with this series? What are you questioning? Because I didn't want to talk to somebody who was just a yes person, who was just, selling this stuff. And he brought up some really good points. And so to go to the point of system of profound knowledge, it's really 4 elements that really combine everything that you have to put in within a transformation or even leading a company. Okay. And it talks about one of the aspects is understanding systems. Right? Understanding how things connect, how things work. When you make this change, this happens. Right? The other part is, again, I the pressure of being on camera, but
there are no cameras.
Yeah. So it's about appreciation of a system. The second one is management theory. Yeah. So when you're going about doing some change and sort of, what theory are you using? What knowledge have you gotten? Like, just don't take a textbook and say this will apply. But what are you going to test? And this is where PDSA came, which he took from Sherwalt. No, again, they're going to get upset with me, but who Deming learned from. And so...
Are you talking about Plan, Do, Check, Act?
Yes, but this is Plan, Do, Study, Act.
Study Act, okay, yeah.
Right? Yeah. The big difference on the S part is the language is very powerful, as you know. And when we check, it's just like looking at something and moving on. Study is a part of, okay, what happened? Understanding, going through it. So that's the second part. The third part is about understanding variation, right? Knowing that in everything we do, there's variation. Yeah. Like where I currently work, right, we do precious metal trading. Even the gold bars are not 100% silver or gold. Okay. They're like 4 nines or 3 nines. There's always variation in everything we do. Okay. And it's really important for us to understand when we're working with teams, when we're working with people, we have to be able to distinguish what's a signal, what's a noise, and be able to really address those problems and not just react with every swing. This month we delivered this, why? Yeah. As opposed. And so it's really understanding variation. And he links variation to quality. Okay. Where quality, if you had to break it down, is about reducing variation. Okay, yeah, true. So that you're constantly. And then once you get into being able to reduce, you get into predictability. And then you're going to get into management. So when he describes, again, if this is my perception of it, but he describes management as usual, the way we currently work, or the way is looking through the rear view mirror. Right? But we can't make decisions always looking through the rear view mirror. Yeah. So how do you use the data? How do you use the things? And he's a statistician by training. Yeah. That's where he got his doctorate. And so how do you use that in order to make predictions? Okay.
How do you reconcile this with software development?
Well, I'll just share you the fourth one.
What's the fourth one?
Psychology.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This is the whole human element. This is where Agile comes super well.
You're about to answer my question.
I know, right? He talks about intrinsic and extrinsic motivations.
Yeah.
Like how it's not about pay for performance.
Yeah.
Right. Like performance evaluations. Mm-hmm. He's and I'm
detrimental.
To the point where, one of his arguments is, okay, so think about your team's evaluations. Right? What was the average? Right? And most of it is meeting expectations. Right?
Yeah.
Like we're just like this. And yet, why aren't we hitting our quarterly numbers? Right? Why are we not hitting our corporate strategy when everybody's meeting expectations? So
the parts are doing the work, the sum of it, or the relationship between it is not.
And it's and so when we look at system thinking, it's a component of that, of understanding systems but you have, and this is where I think Agile plays a big role, right? Especially on that psychology part, the discussions. How do you communicate?
Yeah.
Right. How do you drive out fear?
Yeah.
Right. How do you create consistency of purpose? How do you externalize? And so, yeah, it's very fascinating, and to the point where I have to remind myself to stop reading and apply it.
Okay. Yeah. At some point, then you're better positioned to have critical thinking in regards to what you're reading.
And that's the one of the big things about doing the talks that we're doing, Chris and I.
Yeah.
To take the time to actually synthesize what we're saying, and or what we're thinking, and put it. And it's funny in our talk we have a picture of the way we connected. I think it was 2017 or 2017. Both him and I it was 2016 or 2017, I can't remember, but we both presented the same topic at Coach Camp.
Really?
It was like...
So yes, you merged them?
We looked at each other like, okay, should we merge?
I guess you merged them.
And then, but he was at a level a lot higher than I am and it was just great. And then since then, we've just been connecting on that. And I always joke... He brings the conversation from here down because he at the intellectual. I try and bring it from the 7-year-old up.
And we try and meet in the middle there.
Yeah, we try and meet it in the middle.
It's good, especially if you're doing a conference together. It's always useful.
Yeah.
So I'm a Scrum Master. Yeah. I've been working with a team for, I'll say, 18 months. I've attended your conference in Toronto. I've developed an appreciation for system thinking, and I get it. I think I get the high level picture of what you're trying to get us to address in our situation.
It's funny because you say that, and I don't believe you.
Why? Why's that?
Just because it takes time. It really. Sorry, I don't mean to cut off.
No, go ahead.
But it's not something that I don't know, for the feedback that we've received and so forth, it's not something that will come very easily, in the sense of because it's so ingrained in us to think another way through school,
more analytical.
Yeah, through school. Just think about your school day. Think about how your day is divided up.
Yeah.
Right. Think about how it's in 45 minutes or 55-minute sections.
Different subjects.
You get a 5-minute or a 10-minute break. You get your lunch. You have your bell. What does this all remind you of?
Pavlov?
It reminds you, and this is where high schools originate, was this originated from they wanted to train people to go into factories. So the bell at the school was the same as the factory.
Yeah.
So you got used to it, and they knew at a scientific level that this was the optimal amount of time.
Yeah.
Before that, you had things where people would be in certain subjects, and they weren't grouped by age.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And the subjects were basically merged together in many ways.
So we're trained. Even myself, I was trained And it's only a few years ago where it was funny because I made notes, right? Like, what can I talk about? Things like that. And do I really need them? But that just goes back to my old way of like, how do I prepare? Like, I need to be very methodical and so forth.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you talk about, somebody coming to the talk and what we present, our big thing for them is,
For them,
for the audience,
yeah.
is how do we look at things differently?
Yeah.
Changing our lens will change your transformation.
Okay.
Meaning, if you look at things just a bit differently, with understanding what people's motivations are, you're understanding how system works, how they're compensated on, right? How just our language we use, right? How often do you hear you and I, they in a conversation? That brings blame, that brings you versus me.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're getting things together. It's about we environment. And in our talk, we have two exercises that we do, and one is about how did you do in the exam, right? And we started off by a quote by Myron Tribus.
Okay.
He was an MIT Sloan professor, and he said, "What we see depends on what we thought before we looked."
Okay.
Meaning, I'll let that resonate because it took me. I'm not the quickest in the room. But we see.
I'm lucky I can listen to it over and over
No,
again
I know,
until I get it.
We see, what we see, how we react to things.
Yeah.
All depends on how we were conditioned before, what we were exposed to before we looked at something. Right. So, for example, if you're in a management role and you got there because your boss was a command and control, right? What do you think you're going to do? Right. That's.
Yeah, obviously your boss will reward that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So obviously, yes, you will move up if you have that kind of behavior.
And David Marquet, in his book Turn the Ship Around, mentions that it takes on average like 2 years for somebody to unlearn how they were managed to change. And that is one of the books that I keep lending out that keep disappearing. But to go to your point is...
What is my point?
Yes, like what's next?
You mean for a Scrum Master? Or
Yeah.
Like I for sure was bringing you back. I wasn't letting you go on that one.
Oh, I know.
Because I've watched videos on YouTube. I've seen Chapman conference at Meetup Toronto, and and then going to your conference was a tipping point. I go back to my team, and I want to start. I just don't know what would be the first step for me as a Scrum Master with my team in order to. I'm not sure what kind of lens I should put on, and I don't even know where the lenses are. What do you recommend? Mentor me.
So I can comment on what I experienced.
Yeah.
I can recommend like what the transformation that I went through. And
In what kind of role?
At the role, I was a strategic program manager.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically, I was responsible for putting in new strategic initiatives within the company, whether it was working with teams, whether it was working with the executives, both on strategic planning or going in and helping a team work on different issues.
Okay.
The first time I heard or even got an inclination of a new lens of looking at things, it took me about 4 months to actually make any connections.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I remember sitting there, and I was looking through my notes, and I was just sitting on the chair, and it was like I had these blinders taken off of me. And I look at that, and I go, wow, okay, there's the operations team. Here's their motivations. Here's how they connect to things. That's why they're doing what they're doing. Look at how they're rewarded. Look at how they're compensated. And I would map this out all on my brain, and then I eventually mapped it out just on my own, just mapped it out on a whiteboard, and it just started opening up things on even how to approach people, how to talk to them and see what their motivations are.
Okay.
And it was just like an eye-opening experience. There's an exercise that one of the first exercises that I did, and I do this with teams, and I can do it right here if you want.
Yeah, paper right there.
Yeah. And this goes back to something, I started off, usually I introduce this when there's a couple of different scenarios, but the most common one is when we're stuck in one way of looking at things.
Yeah.
When we're stuck in a sense of saying, okay, I'm the one putting this in, right? This is how I see things. And so this is where what's most important is I'm actually recognizing these situations in the moment rather than on the train going like this. I should have done something. And it really starts where I'll bring somebody, and I've done this with teams, I've done this with executives or individuals.
Try to keep it within the context of Bob, the Scrum Master.
Bob, the Scrum Master. And I say,
let's keep it simple.
Yeah, Bob, the Scrum Master.
Not that it's simple, but it's simpler.
Will this go through the paper if I write?
Just take a couple, and
Yeah.
A couple.
And so I go, at the end of the day, do you remember back when you were in school?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And were you ever asked this question? How did you do
on the exam? That's it?
The exam.
Oh, yeah.
Can I...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I would say, okay, when we look at this, right, let's look at this as a system, right? In the system, right, we have inputs, right? And we actually have us writing the exam. So I do my best Ellen impersonation. Sorry, Ellen.
Some graphic facilitation here.
Yeah, no.
Some bicablo.
And so I have, we have the person writing it.
Yeah.
Right? And then we have an output. And what's the output, right? The output is my grade. Okay, so then I'll ask people, okay, what are the inputs? What goes into here? So what I normally get is things like my ability.
Okay, I was going to say the teacher.
Right? Well, I can't ask you these questions because you're a little bit further advanced.
Yeah, you might be surprised.
No. Okay.
Okay.
What? So you say the teacher?
Yeah. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Books.
Books. What about books?
The writing is the subjects in the books.
Yeah. What else?
My dad,
Yeah.
my mom, my friends.
So you've seen this before?
You too. I have not.
Okay.
I don't think I have.
No,
if I did, I don't remember.
No.
Unless you did it at the meetup we went to.
I think I might have, but
Okay.
This is something, when we talk about signal versus noise,
Okay.
And outliers. And
Yeah.
This is actually the first time anybody's done this approach with me. So this is why I love it. I'm doing this and I'm on camera.
Okay.
But what I normally get 99% of the time is my ability.
Oh, okay.
Right? So when they talk about my ability, they talk about
That makes sense.
my energy when I'm doing that.
Okay.
Right? And then they go, my commitment is another one, right?
Yeah.
And
These are higher level, deeper definitions right there.
right? And they're all inputs.
Than mine. Yeah.
But a lot of times they get stuck, usually at this point.
Okay.
So I'll ask questions about, is there any time where a fellow student asked a question and you didn't know that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that comes back to, fellow students. Right? Was there a time, that your teacher was able to explain themselves easily? Like, so you have the teacher here.
Yeah.
Right? Videos that you've seen, things that you've learned, your how much you love the subject and how much it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The commitment and energy.
Right?
Is
The exam format,
also
all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what then I'll ask is, well, now that we know that there's a bunch of other things, right? Why did you get stuck at 3? Right? Why? And so this is where.
And why?
This is where a lot of times I have to be quiet and let silence.
Rook its magic.
Yeah. Sue taught me this, and I'm still working on it, because this is everything that I can control. These are all the things that I have direct power over, right? And usually it's things, these are out of my control.
Wow.
We're less uncertain,
That's so surprising, to be honest with you.
right?
That is so surprising.
And so when
I see so much labeling out there that it's hard to,
right.
that people identify things within themselves that they can control within themselves.
And it's funny because I did this with a project manager, and when we did this, like she said, parents. So I did, my dad, my mom. She took the pen out of my hand and like erased dad. She's like, no, not that. I was like, well, maybe, but and she took a moment. She goes, wow. She goes, I beat myself up because of all of this, and I wonder why things are not working out when there's all these other things.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying is we're not neglecting the individual here, but we're saying that it can't be done in a vacuum. That it things. And now that we know
there
all
might
this,
be factors outside of the individual.
exactly that are playing. Now, when we look at this, how differently would you ask this question?
How did the system help you have a high performance on your exam?
Sorry, what was that?
How did the system,
Again, I hate asking you questions.
or what was how did the environment help you perform well on your exam?
Yeah. Well,
Maybe I am too.
No. It's actually you are actually heading down the path where 99% of the time it goes is you start focusing on the word you. It's the last word that we look at.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the question is asked differently, but always using the word you. So now instead of asking how did you do on the exam, we replace the you by we.
How did we
do on the exam?
Okay.
Our grade. Right?
Yeah. So then you're including all kinds of factors.
Including.
Okay.
And this works a lot.
How did we perform? How did we as an organization perform in the sprint?
Yeah. How did we do it?
That allows you to view the situation in a slightly different angle.
It's awareness questions. Yeah. So instead of
there's a lens for you. Yeah.
How did you do on the proposal? How did we do on the proposal? And this tees it up to how. So when you're leading a transformation, when you're putting in, you get how are you doing on the transformation?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's how are we doing on the transformation? And just changing that language has a huge effect on people.
Yeah.
Now I've introduced this within my team where I work, and I actually call people out when we start using the word.
Just back up the mic a smidgen. Yeah.
When we start using the word they.
Yeah.
We're not neglecting the individual here. We're just trying, the inclusivity. And it's important that. So the first time I saw this, it made sense, but I didn't know how to apply it. I didn't know how to apply it until. So the first time I saw this was in November. It was the following February. And I went to parent-teacher night.
Okay.
Yeah, which I'm going to 2 nights from now. But and I went to the parent-teacher night.
The teacher's going to be getting those powerful questions.
Well, it was funny because my wife's like, calm down.
Yeah.
But sorry, Jenny, calm down. Well, we get there, the teacher started talking about, what our daughter wasn't doing well, and what she needed to work on, right? And I said, well, what are you doing, to help her?
Yeah.
And then I turned, and I didn't know, I was still uneasy about the questioning, and then I thought about this.
Yeah.
And I linked it, and I said, well, what can we do to give her the environment in order for her to perform?
As a community.
What does she need? How do we work together? So then it just took her a little bit aback.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you mean? And I go, well, listen, in order for her to succeed, we need to work together. We need to be on the same page. How do we communicate to each other? And then this just started clicking. Like it clicked. And it's clicking to the point where like I live this. I got a, when you've been to a company for so long, you get a
watch.
Yeah, watch. But I got money.
Okay.
Like they gave, Visa cards.
Oh, nice.
And
my boss doesn't give me that.
I brought it home and I gave half to Jenny. And she's like, why are you giving me half? This is yours. I go, no.
It's ours.
It's ours. I can't do this, or I can't
I can't have this money if you're not helping me with the kids.
Exactly. I can't do this podcast if you don't take the time to do the same thing. And so this is then how things started connecting for me. How I started looking at things, just changing my language. So when you talk to a Scrum Master, I think it's the most important is start being aware of your situation.
Yeah.
The awareness is key. Listen to the language. Listen to how people are interacting with each other.
Yeah.
And it's the subtleties, right? Do you have these big empty slogans on the wall, right? Is it just noise?
Courage.
Yeah.
Yes.
Team,
I like to make fun of those. Yeah.
we manage what we can measure, right? And so at the end of the day, like, what really matters in a transformation?
What does really matter in a transformation?
That is something that we can spend quite a bit of time, and I would love to talk. This is where I might get. I can go off on another. This is why I love doing these things with you, Eric, because I love your questions.
Thanks.
What really matters in a transformation is are we transforming the right areas?
Okay.
Are we actually transferring? Are we making progress? Or are we just decorating the fish?
What does that mean, decorating the fish?
Decorating the fish
Is it like lipstick on a pig? Same thing?
Yeah, decorating the fish, everybody knows fish start to smell at a certain period of time. Okay. So when things are bad, right, as opposed to actually addressing that there's a fish, that there's something there, all we're doing is just putting clothes on the fish, putting a little bit of perfume, a hat, right? And this thing, like things like we need more strategy, right? Or we need to put in performance reviews. We need to put these things in.
We need to install safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, are we really focusing on what matters? And what matters is how we work together.
Okay.
What are the interactions we're having, right? There's a quote from Deming that talks about 97% of problems are systems related, and 3% are people.
That's why I'm surprised a little bit. I'm not hearing it correctly. I'm not understanding correctly. People's behavior and the interactions between human beings will change with great difficulty, if at all, if the system does not change.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat that? I jumped to conclusion.
Yeah. The relationship or the interaction between human beings in an organization will not change if the surrounding system does not change.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So when you say that transformation is about interactions between human beings, maybe the interaction between human beings will not...
Sorry, interaction between the different components.
Different components of the system. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no
okay, that's
problem.
what I'm saying. I probably understood
No.
wrong. Okay.
This is where I could draw it out, but
There's a paper. I'll probably scan those and add it on the description.
I've drawn.
But Ellen would be proud of your drawing, by the way.
Yeah,
It's very nice.
We might have to have a talk. She'll probably tell me. So, sorry, what was your question again?
I misunderstood what you said.
Okay.
So I think we're aligned now. It's the interaction between components.
Yeah.
Whatever those components are.
Right. For example, where I'm working now, there was an individual who he was sitting next to the door where everybody was coming in and out.
Okay.
Right.
That's annoying.
And to the point where he didn't feel like he was engaged and motivated. Okay. So one of the first things I did, I was like, "You're going to go sit over here," and we made room with him with the developers. I said, he's a BA, and I said, "You're going to go sit there, and I'll talk to them, and we're just going to move you."
Yeah.
Right? And he came to me about a couple of weeks later, and he goes, "I don't want to move back." Right?
Yeah.
But it was just these little things that you notice. So when I talk about just sitting there and noticing these things, so it's not about noticing, how your team interacts when they're in situations. But when they're outside, like, how are they working? What are the little things that you're seeing that are taking place?
And one way to see those things is through a Gemba walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those subtle little things. When I got there, it was funny. I ordered, a whole bunch of whiteboards and put it up, and I was told, no, we don't need them, right? And I was like, well, we're going to put them up there, and if you use them, you use them, right? And then within, I would say, 24 hours, I would say almost all of them were being used, right? But these are all
They
things,
were or they were not?
They
So
were
they
being
were
used.
being used,
They
okay.
were being used to the point where I got asked for more, and
They're expensive buggers.
yeah, especially
And the ones on wheels? Man.
especially when I'm pointing out what a good whiteboard is and what a not good whiteboard.
Exactly. It's like buying a car.
Yeah. They're like, why do you know so much about it? I was like, trust me, you don't want to get this one.
I know all about whiteboards and Post-its.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. I bought a whole bunch of Post-its and Sharpies and just left them around.
Just basically you bought collaboration tools. That's what you did.
But these are all elements that help them, the components, more efficiently together. And you're putting in different to help them. But these are all subtle little things that can help. Now, another thing is, as a Scrum Master, we're really focused within our own team.
Yeah.
And how that works.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that bothers me about it. And it's not a knock on Scrum Masters or things like that, but it's a byproduct of the system because that's what you're focused on and so forth.
Yeah, that's why I always say a Scrum Master is actually an Agile coach. They just have an extra. They don't have less skills. They have more skills. It's an Agile coach plus a deep knowledge of Scrum. But if you're only interacting within the team, you're basically swimming in your bathtub. I mean, you're splashing around a lot of stuff, but you're not moving.
No.
Yeah.
And you're still within the prevailing mode of management.
Yeah, the dominant culture.
And all you're doing is translating and trying to protect your team. But at the end of the day, you're getting hit all over the place.
Yeah, that's called transportation.
And this is where, like, for on my role right now, I spend as much time outside my team, working with the other teams, working with the other departments to talk about how we have to work together. Right? Where I'm working right now, they're like, we got to put in Scrum. We got to put in this. They're really eager, and I'm holding them off. I was like, we just got to figure out how we work together.
Yeah.
Like, let's just sit down and work this out, right? Do we have to put in the necessary, like, I have principles to follow, right? Like, how are we looking at we?
Yeah.
Right? How do we focus on the system? How do we focus on we? The other thing is, I'm not a big component of metrics, and I know that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
But until we understand what metrics to use and what, it could be a huge detriment to the team.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't know how to interpret it, right, and that goes about understanding variation. When you look at swings from one month to another, hey, we just increased our output by 15% month over month. Okay, but like, how are you going to explain next week when we're down 5%? And then you're going to make all these changes because you're thinking, we can. Why aren't we constantly doing this? But at the end of the day, the system is in control of our output.
Yeah.
And if we're not spending time working on the system, we're failing.
Yeah.
And this is where we talk about 3 different ways to improve your numbers. Right. One is you game your own numbers.
Yeah, that's an easy way.
Right. Like, I'm like, hey, this is how I'm compensated. This is what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be doing this, this, and this.
Yeah, I do drawings once in a while. I've been taking a break lately though, but I did that. It's called Day in the Life of Agile.
Okay.
And the boss saying, "Hey, the other team did 80 points."
Yeah.
And so the Scrum Master just erased the 40 points and put 80.
Yeah.
So it gets better.
Yeah.
I'm happy now.
The second way is you game the team and how they work, or you improve the system. Right. Like, one of the things we talk about, like on a monthly basis, I share with our leadership group, what we've released over the last month.
Yeah.
And I don't put numbers. Yeah. I just say, here's what we worked on, and I got a question about why aren't there numbers? And I go, well, how are we supposed to interpret these numbers? Right? In a certain release, something might be this much effort, right? And we could release 15 of them, but the value is just as good as something that is one big block.
Yeah.
So, but if I look at the numbers, in 1 month I do 15, the other I do 1. Right?
Yeah. Variance.
But they're just as valuable.
Yeah. Interesting.
So when you look at the numbers that way, right?
Yeah.
How you're going to justify it? They're like, no, I see 15. But that one is perhaps more valuable or just as valuable as those other ones.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah. And so,
yeah. Okay. What's your stance on estimation?
like ranges.
Sorry?
So I prefer range.
Range.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't talk about, so the boss wants to know how long this will take to build. You talk about range.
Yeah.
Okay. Meaning?
Meaning, with a a degree of certainty, right? Anything that's within 3 months of right now, we're more certain than after. I'm not a big fan of putting these big product roadmaps together.
Yeah.
I always talk about what can we deliver in the next 3 months.
Are you still in software or in something?
Well, I'm in. I work at a company called Kitco, and we do precious metal trading. So when I tell I learn, I try and push the boundaries of knowledge and things like that. And so we do 3 main businesses: is media, the whole trading, precious metal trading. So gold, silver, palladium, rhodium, platinum.
And your role in this?
So I'm the solutions delivery and integration manager.
Okay.
So I'm responsible for what we're delivering from the IT's perspective.
Okay. So, yeah.
So I'm still in the software, but in a completely new industry that I am in. And so I lead the product lines and I oversee it. And so, yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't sure if we were still in the IT software development realm, because it's quite it can be quite chaotic once in a while. Actually, always.
It is. Just we talked about priorities today. Just what's higher in priority? I go, well, let's talk about value.
Yeah.
As opposed to priorities. What has higher value?
Those are all
Anyways,
concepts that are important to deal with. Let's get back to Bob, the Scrum Master. So let's say I'm at a retrospective. I could perhaps apply this. How did you do on the exam? But apply it at a sprint level.
Well, the biggest.
I just need a couple of tools to jumpstart me.
Yeah, where the biggest application this will take place is not within the team.
Okay.
Is outside the team.
Okay.
Is how our actions and what we're doing affect everything around us, and how the things affect us as a team. Right? How do we understand variation? How do we understand our output?
Okay.
Right? Are we making suggestions, right, based on our velocity, and that's how it's changing every week, but that's actually just normal, right? So one of the things you can look at, if you're working with a team that's very numbers oriented and output and things like that, is really start understanding about variation and signals versus noise. There's a book by Mark Graban called Made to Measure of Success, something like that. Okay. And he builds upon another really interesting book, but it's a little dry, called Don Wheeler, Understanding Variation. Okay. Or Understanding Chaos. I can't remember. Okay. Where they start putting a control chart based on what they do. Okay. And so they use standard deviations for upper control limit, lower control limit, and they start mapping these according to sort of like a control chart. Yeah. And then based on that, you can then start seeing your team's output, whether or not that's something that we have to look in or it's part of the system. And in June, I conducted a workshop at KPMG. Okay. But not for KPMG, but for System Thinking Montreal. Okay. For the Red Bead experiment. Oh, really? Yeah, my dad made the palette and everything. Okay. But one of the things it demonstrates is who's control of the system. Right? And how no matter what they're doing and how many beads they're getting, at the end of the day, right, management is really focused on the individual and how they're performing rather than working on the beads. On the beads. Right? Yeah. And even using the data. And this is the other thing is you can start using data to prove your points. Yeah. Right. And to say, hey, like my team is good. Yeah. Like until we fix this, right? Until we fix the inputs and outputs and what's going on, like my team will always produce this. Yeah. So you could tell us to work harder. It's still gonna, but it's not gonna help. Yeah. and we're going to burn out.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is very a difficult subject, and one that even like I'm still like grasping is the applications of it.
What approach did you use at Agile? What's the name of the conference? Agile Toronto.
Toronto Agile Conference.
Toronto Agile
TAC.
Conference. TAC. What approach did you and Chapman, Chris Chapman, right?
Yep.
Chris Chapman. Did you use to? Because you probably had what 60 minutes to present something.
Yeah, and it was interesting when we looked at it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but no. Go ahead.
When we looked at all the slides that we
Okay, how many slides did you have? Now, don't tell me 60.
Do you want to know how many slides we created throughout the whole process?
Oh, probably 200. Go on.
Up higher.
Yeah, really.
I think we were closer to 4.
That's nasty.
But it was just because there was this, there were times, and I do recommend working like this to get our thoughts out. We would just riff.
Yep.
And one person would just riff, get it, and the other one's just typing away like story mapping.
Yep.
And we'd put that in, and we'd come up with these slides. And it was funny because we were actually, when we go through our presentation, we'd be like working on an individual slide. And we're like, okay, but how does that fit in the whole thing? And then we're like, no, we're just optimizing that slide.
Applying systems thinking to a conference build
and
up.
So what we ended up doing is we could have talked for like 3 days on this.
Yeah, especially Chris.
Yeah.
You know, Chris has a room at every coach camp, right?
Yeah.
The noisy room. They call it the Chapman room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's still there. That's still a thing.
I think he introduced, like I would always hear him do the red bead experiment.
The red bead experiment, and that gets very loud.
And the ballpoint.
Ballpoint gets loud also.
Yeah, and there's one more.
I got the balls right behind you.
Oh.
See it? Yeah. That's my ballpoint game.
I do have
kit.
the red bead experiment if you ever need it.
Yeah.
I did it with Luc Saint Laurent, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He was the president. He was a great president. By the way, Luc, like he even had the tie coming off throughout the session. Like he really and that's what it's been difficult on it, because it's a whole new way of thinking, but it also goes against like how management wants us to work, how we're compensated, how how we interact with each other.
So those were the main points that you talked about at the conference?
Yeah. So, well, the main points for us were things that matter is we really focused. There was a ton of things. So we could have talked about driving out fear, consistency of purpose.
Yeah. But you did not.
No, because each one of those is
it's a thread that could go on.
A thread that you can go on. And so my thing was, Chris, like, how do we simplify this?
Yeah. And how did you?
We said it's about changing our lens, seeing things.
That was the theme there. Changing.
Yeah, we wanted like at the beginning, like I said, Chris, this is what happened to me when I went through it. It was basically just how I looked at things differently, and that's where I started.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the approach that we take.
Yeah.
And he agreed, and it was the same with him, and so it was actually really hard to stay focused on that.
Yeah.
And so we really focused on how do we change our lens? Because we talked about, the state of Agile, the 13th edition, the reasons versus the challenges.
Okay.
This didn't get into the talk, but like our the top 3 challenges, reasons have been consistent for the last 3 years, which has been, we wanted things doing faster, wanted things doing cheaper. And changing priorities.
Yeah.
Right?
And maintain high quality.
Right. Yeah. But these are things that it's not just Agile. It's like any business wants to do that. That's how you make money. Yeah. What are the 3 main things that are challenges? Organizational resistance to change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Other departments not adopting the approach. Right. So these are all things that just reinforce the fact that we're trying to change things locally.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like the values, they make sense. When you look at interactions over documentation, right, like they're natural. We want to tell stories. We want to talk.
Yeah.
But how do you translate to somebody who has an MBA?
Well, how do you translate that to a huge financial institution? Yeah. That's where I am right now. We all know that There's a misalignment between what we're trying to do in IT and budgeting, finance. There's a misalignment between what we're trying to do in IT and HR. There's a misalignment at every level. Did you get that question? What kind of questions did you get? Like, I work in a big insurance company. I work at Capital One. What you're saying is great and dandy, but how do I convince HR, finance, sales, marketing, communication, so on and so forth to be included in the we, so we can have that conversation to optimize the whole?
I think we're
without using scotch or whiskey.
What's interesting when I go to these events, and I go now to connect with people, to see what they're doing, to gain their experience, to learn just the conversations. And what I've been noticing more and more, and I'm not trying to knock anybody here, but it's just a noticing that people go from one bank to another.
Mm-hmm.
Like they move, like they just alternate between banks.
Yeah. Because that's what we know.
And I go, well, what is actually changing?
Right? A single component might be changing.
And I might be, pessimist on this.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to agile with a big A, right? Are we at a tipping point?
Mm-hmm.
Are we at a point now where, the PMBOK or the PMP was a couple of years ago, or a few years ago?
Yeah.
Like I'm hearing things
or
where, or Prince 2. Right? I'm hearing things now that somebody's an agile coach just getting out of university.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how? Like I don't even consider myself a coach,
mm-hmm.
right? Like it's. Have you applied it? Have you used it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? My wife Jenny, she would. You're
gonna get in so much trouble.
I know. She would get upset because she would look at something on Pinterest and try to bake it and duplicate it. She's a great chef and baker and stuff, but she would do this one thing after seeing the instructions,
following the steps,
and then she's like, "How come I can't do this?"
Mm-hmm.
And I go, "Well, think about what they probably have done this 1,000 times." And they pick the 10 best, right?
Yeah.
But you don't see that work. You don't see what happens, and at what point is this gonna, like, do we even need agile coach? Like, or and this is where, again, I'm not in, like, I've never been a part of the consulting business, like got into it. So like I leave that up to Chris's side when we talk, because my approach is not getting into the system, into where they're working and being. Like at my new position, we talked about consulting, and I said, no, I want to be with a team. I want to be a part of it. I don't want to, it's just not part of what I want right now. And so this is where I look at like agile, like where is it going, right? And that's.
It's an ongoing debate. An ongoing debate. But, I mean, for the amount of time that I've read articles or seen panicked coaches on Twitter, I won't name any names, saying agile is dead. Yeah, if I had $1 each time, I wouldn't have to do any consulting work.
No.
It's the thing is that what agile is just a label on something deeper, and this deeper thing has been around for a hell of a long time.
Exactly.
I mean, it started with a company called Toyota with lean. That's the basis of it. Agile. I mean, I started
even before that.
Probably, obviously, nature is agile in its the way of adapting to.
Have you read Peter Schultz's leadership handbook?
I don't know.
They talk about how management came to be, right? And they talk about how we used to work versus, the management side. And we got Taylor and things like that. And even in like how the incredible stuff in World War II that we were able to do, right? By just interacting, like the first cross-functional teams were platoons, right? Where you had gunners, you had all different, medics, like all working together. Not just like we're all machine gunnists. But
put all the machine gunners together. I in university I studied total quality circles. It's all the same things.
Was Duran, like, would you learn about Duran, zero defect?
The what effect?
Zero defect.
Yeah, zero defect, obviously. Yeah, absolutely. Kirk Lewin and psychosociology and organizational development. For me, agile is just a label.
Yeah.
It's fine. The need for organizations to have human beings interacting ain't gonna change. The interactions between various components within an organization, including human beings, is not gonna change. So whatever. Yes, I mean, when we started doing agile coaching in 2007, the term didn't really exist. We just emerged, I don't know, more or less by accident. Something else will emerge, but the need will still be there.
Oh, and I completely agree with you. I think it comes down to how we interact with you. Is there consistency of purpose? Right? Are we working together to provide something of value?
Yeah.
Right? That's
There you go.
at the end of the day. That's it. Do we have to label it something? You can label it what you want.
Well, you have to.
I know, but for me,
I say you have to, and not for good reasons. You have to make it sexy. XP was not sexy. That's why it didn't work out. I mean, the managers were, I don't know, maybe afraid of the word extreme. I have no idea. That was a bad choice of names by Ken Beck. But anyways, that's the past. Agile
even pair programming.
Yeah.
Is considered waste.
Twice the salary for the same problem. Yeah, absolutely. But agile is safer. It's a human language, easy to understand. Scrum. Deliver something in 2 weeks. There you go. You're certified. So it's very easy to sell at the management, because the people that are us agile coaches are at the management level. It's not team members. So it's very easy to sell. And once that agile momentum wears out,
It'll be called something else.
It'll be called something else. We'll call it nimble. Now these days it's DevOps. It's something.
But even that is
same thing.
You see what I find interesting is you see the not cartoons but the illustrations of it and where that fits within the cycle.
Yeah.
And they'll have agile is between like the business and the development team, right? And then the development team to operations is DevOps. I'm like,
sad. Anyway, it doesn't matter. At some point, what are you going to do? Let's be happy. Let's just be happy.
And that's why
I always say worst case, and it's not that bad. I'll just go back to programming. It'd be fantastic.
Yes. I don't know if I could ever go back. Like I never programmed. I learned a little bit, but I just love working with other humans and the interactions.
Yeah.
Like so I did an exercise a few years ago where I say, what's my goal in life? Right. And it's evolved over the time, but at the time it was, be somebody in the background looking at rocks or stones and just with a little bit of cleaning and propelling them, putting them to stars. Right. And it's really guided me what I do now. Okay. I look at people, I look at things and I connect them. I look at them and I see potential. I say, you talk to and let's work together. And I'm constantly, I have a hard time accepting praise.
Accepting what? Sorry?
Praise,
yes.
Right. I got praise earlier today for somebody, and it was really awkward for me.
Really?
Really, like I was like, even when we I got praise from from our president in front of everybody, and I was just like, thank you.
And at your height, it can't hide.
No, but I think maybe this goes back to thinking in systems, thinking in things. I go, it's not just me. It's not me. But okay, I could be the face of it, but I can't do this alone.
And it can come off as false modesty and so on.
Yeah. And this is where I have a hard time, and this is where I'm still working on. When somebody says that, I say thank you and I pause. Because before I would justify it.
Oh, really?
I'm like, no, it wasn't. And so this is why, I believe, in what we're doing is just fundamentally how we work. Right? Let's call it whatever you want. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. But how do we? So I look at management as really focusing on two things, right? Consistency of purpose, right? So making sure that you have a vision that you can sell to your employees and who you're working with,
compelling
that you can get people on board.
A clear understanding of the why.
Exactly, the what, the why. Right. Today it was funny because I was explaining the vision of how these two product lines that we wanted to do, I would draw it out as we're going. And somebody said, "You don't have a PowerPoint?" I was like, "No." I said, "I'm just we're gonna chat and we're gonna draw it out, and I'm gonna show you this vision." And I could tell you each time in the 2 sessions that I had, I was worried. Like I was like, "Oh, am I gonna have enough words left for the podcast?"
I think you do.
Yeah. They're like, "This is better than a PowerPoint," because they see it evolve.
Yeah.
As we're going, and I go, this is important for people in a leadership position in a thing to be able to communicate, be able to share this with people, right? Not the how, right? Like they were like, "Well, what do we?" I was like, "That's what, like, we'll figure that out."
Yeah.
And then the second one is, how do we interact with each other? How are we creating those elements of
connections?
Those connections. Talking. Are you talking? Right? Like I have somebody who's like, "Well, could you speak to this person for me?" I was like, "Why do you want me to do it? Like, what can we work? Let's work on the system. Like, what interactions are you having?" Right?
Yeah.
And making sure those take place.
Yeah.
And that we're not just things, and everything will work out.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. Taking a compliment, just saying thank you helps a lot.
Yeah.
It's a simple process.
And the other thing about system thing is I also apply it to my personal life.
Oh my. Okay, this I want to know about.
Yeah. So when we talk about intrinsic,
does your wife know?
She knows, but I don't know if she knows that it's system thinking or things like that.
Oh, now she'll know.
But extrinsic versus intrinsic motivations, right?
Applied in your family.
Apply to my family.
Clean up your room and you'll get...
Yeah, my wife wanted to give an allowance. Right?
Sorry?
Wanted to give an allowance to my eldest daughter.
Yeah, extrinsic.
And I was like, why?
Yeah.
Right? She's like, well, to give her. And I was like, no, we're part of the family. You don't get paid to do your room. Right? I mean, our room, sorry. She's going to love this.
I'll bleep it out.
No, it's okay. It's okay. She knows I'm silly that way. But like dishes wise, she came, like my daughter came up to me. She's like, "So Daddy, I did the dishes tonight. Like, Mommy said, right, I can get, an allowance."
Okay.
And I was like, "For doing what?" And she's like, "For doing the dishes." I was like, "To be contributing to the family and to be part of,
guilt trip."
No, but I was like, I didn't quite say it, this way, but I want to ensure like, she knew like, this is part of what we do and help each other, right? It's not about getting paid to do this. It's about, helping us out. Like I ask her, because she's eldest and we have 2 younger kids, and I asked her to help with taking them out of the car, right? Like things. I was like, and she asked why. I was like, this is just part of us working together. The what and the why. Like we had some guests over, and my daughter kept telling me like, like, "Look, Daddy, look." And instead of just looking at her and yelling and saying, "Stop," right? And I said, "Okay, hey Quinn, right? Daddy's in a conversation right now, right? Can you see that we're talking, right? Would you like it if, interrupted there, right? Could we wait, right? And then you can jump in, right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't always have that patience, right?
I would do the same thing, but I would not say a word. I was go. She said, "Okay, I get it, Dad."
Her results from school. I didn't want to share her results. Right? She got stressed out at première année over a grand dictée.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Daddy, like I'm so stressed." Like, and I go, "Quinn, like, did you put in the work?
Yeah.
Did you, things like that. We can't control how you feel at the exam. We can't, how you do on the exam. Like this question.
Did you manage all your inputs?
Right? Yeah. Did we? Did we take the time?
Did we manage all your?
Oh yeah, I would say, did we take the time? Did you get enough rest? Things like that, and it was all yes to all that. And I go, "Quinn, whatever happens today, it happens."
Is the only thing that could happen,
right?
Yeah.
I remember in February of the year, we get some of the results, and she was slowly progressing, and then there was like one where it was a really bad grade, and of course, luckily. She wasn't up.
Okay.
Right? But I went back to old Rob.
You went back to what? Sorry?
Old Rob, like the old way of thinking.
Okay. Old
like,
Rob. Okay, sorry.
What happened here? Like, a one result out of like the last, like I
Really?
would say 15. They were all like there was,
They were graded on
but
us.
without me visually being able to see the trend,
Yeah.
right? I would just focus on this one
Wow.
and then go to her and be like, "Why did you get this? What like?"
Yeah.
And then maybe we would have had to change, right? And I would have adjusted, but
Yeah.
you know and we found out, you know, there were some things going on, but you know, she was not feeling well. Like there was all these other things, and so it was like, hey, but you know, thinking about it this way, you know, it changed my perspective on how to approach. Right. So these are other things that I've also used in the work area as well when we look at this stuff. So it's
You know what your daughter's going to tell you in a few months, if not a few years. I want an allowance to be able to practice my money management skills.
well,
How do you say no to that?
I'm like, okay, you know, yeah. So when she asks to go buy something, I say, okay, how much is it? Right? And I go, you know, how much do I have in my hand? How much change am I going to get? You know, we work, but again, it's.
But if you give her an allowance, she can just manage her home purchases. It'd be
She
fantastic.
could, but I go, what do you need it for? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like we got everything that we need, and it's not like we're super stringent and we're not, you know, like. But no, I as you can probably tell, I'm a big, like, I love my family and
It shows. It shows.
I also look at it as being an example to them by doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and participating. I don't know what kind of reactions you got, but I got the first one, an action shot of the talk that we gave in Toronto, like
Where Chris would stay on the stage and you would stay on the ground.
Oh, there's that one, yeah.
I saw it on Twitter.
yeah, we made a joke about that. And then there was one of the big room we were in, and because my daughter, like, I would go to these or do presentations, she never understood, and so I showed it to her, and she's like, "Oh, Dad, that's awesome." And I was like,
Oh wow!
"Yeah." I go, okay, I can go now.
Fantastic.
But yeah, it's been good.
That's amazing. You do a lot of storytelling. What do you apply a certain pattern when you do storytelling, or you just wing it?
Subconsciously, I don't know.
Okay.
I do try when I'm trying to get points across.
Okay.
When I'm trying to, I don't want to try and drive somebody to a conclusion. I want to lead them to a conclusion.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't want to push something onto them, things like that. So I try and tell stories in a way which are not directly linked to what we're doing, but they can make the link. Right, and so that they're making those connections, that they're bringing those conclusions, and they're coming to it.
Yeah, like a collective storytelling.
Yeah, the best way to get your point across, I find, especially when I was an outsider, was for people that I work with to come up with the conclusions that you were leading them towards, right? But for them to have thinking that they like. Not that they've come up with, but like there was a few times where, you know, a couple months later, they're like, "Rob, we got to do this," and I'm like, "Weren't you listening 2 months ago?" No, I thought of this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But when it comes to storytelling, it's such a powerful tool. Maybe it comes back to when I was young and we go camping, and you know, there's not much to do but. Talk and tell stories.
The fire in the middle. And
I still love the fire. We have a little trailer out past Hawkesbury that I go to in the summertime, and I love it. But for storytelling, I find my daughters are just next level for me.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, like there are times with my youngest daughter where I'm like, where did that come from? And she'll be telling me stories. So I don't know if it's something that I just genetically or like come, or if I learn. But when I look at my kids, they're telling stories.
Yeah.
and I don't want them to lose it.
That's the thing. As kids, we have this naturally, and we tend to stop doing it, thinking that it's something only children should be doing.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing way to lead, an amazing way to express ideas, and to create connection. Not the word connection again.
Yeah.
To create connection in the brain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's how how my memory works. I find.
Yeah.
Is to be able to connect it to a bunch of things, but it's mostly like a story. I remember taking my daughter, my youngest daughter, to apple picking, and the teacher was like, she was hearing us interact. And so I use, when I talk to my kids, I use a lot of like the improv games.
Oh yeah.
And like I'll build upon what they're saying. So like my youngest would, start talking about this crazy story.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, well, that's not true, or, what are you talking about? I'll just be like, oh, really? Like, what happened? And then she's like, whoa. And then this, and then she'll build it. And the teacher, our daycare teacher, goes, I can see now where she gets her imagination.
There you go.
But that's just, I don't know. It's just, just talking to her.
I give this conference on storytelling, and this it's in French, but it says, well, basically there's like 5 phrases. Nicholas was walking on the roof. Charles took a selfie. Sylvain said, "I am your father." Robert said, Robert mocked a journalist, and David went to Prague. So what I do in the conference, I say, okay, who was walking on the roof? Who was taking a selfie? Who said, "I am your father"? Most people don't remember because there's no context. There's no story around it. Then I go to the next one and I go, well, Santa Claus was walking on the roof. Justin Trudeau took a selfie. Darth Vader said, I am your father. And Donald Trump mocked a journalist, and the other person that not a lot of people know, but Simon Devine went to Prague. And then when I asked that question again, everybody can answer me without any problem at all, because there's a story behind it. We all have a story associated with Santa Claus. We have a story that this was 2016 with Donald Trump when he was on his campaign. So when we relate things to stories, people will remember.
Yeah.
So 3 months later, that person would have remembered that thing that you probably shared in a different way. So yeah, I'm a big fan of storytelling to generate change. Obviously, I am a change agent, so that's my one of my main objectives.
Yeah. How do you? We use the word communication, right? And it's communicate is a lot about one way, right? But how do we create lasting impressions where people
impressions? That's a good one.
Where they remember the concepts or the principles that we're talking about, not necessarily, specifically what we said, but what are the principles we talk? Because I think the biggest change, the biggest success for us is when we see behaviors that occur when we're not influencing them. All right. So, for example, when we talk about how we got to treat each other better, that we have to create things, and we actually see that occur, and it's organically, right? That you can't put on a balance sheet. You can't put on.
Can't measure it.
Can't measure it. Things like that. But those are little things that lead to change. When I gave my update on things that we've done, accomplished, especially in the change part, I focused on little things. Like we just added a field in Jira, right? We added that. Hey, we're gonna send out a communication.
Okay.
Right. Hey, we're actually now, instead of us having individual talks, we're going to just talk as a group. Yeah. Right. These are just little things, right? You can't measure them yet. You can't, but these are all principles that we want to follow. Right. Like even the one thing in Jira was we added, a BA field in Jira. Yeah. Right. Just that. And now, all our updates are within the Jira ticket. Right. And so we're asking, as opposed to us just sending out emails,
Yeah.
and things like just all little things.
Yeah. Little
That,
changes here and there. Yeah.
creating feedback loops between two teams. We started scheduling every 2 weeks. These two teams are going to come and they're going to tell us all the things that are not working well.
Yeah, so now you're local plus plus. You're just a little wider,
Exactly.
making it suck less.
Yeah.
That's the thing I remember most from speaker a few years back. Systems thinking is a lot about making things suck less, step by step.
And
Always that stuck with me.
it was interesting because you know how we're always afraid to look bad.
To look bad.
Yes. To talk about the negative stuff. And when we did we started the feedback loops with this other team, I actually started by saying stuff that was negative,
Okay.
like that I was doing that as well, and I just jumped in. And then the next person was a little hesitant, but and then it just got more comfortable. And I got comments later that day that it was one of the more productive sessions that they've ever had in actual real knowledge transfer. Here were the problems that we encountered.
Yeah.
Are you encountering the same things?
Yeah.
As opposed to, but you see, we can't measure this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I go, how does that affect velocity? How does that affect our team? Now, we're not even actually, this was outside our team. This was going into another department and sharing that. So as a Scrum Master, right, do I have that power or that influence to do it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. One of the things with Scrum or with Safe is I always feel like the teams are competing against each other. Right. There's I did a session, the Toyota Kata improvement in the classroom by Mike Richter.
Where's this?
I did it at my company.
Okay.
I did a little workshop.
Okay.
To demonstrate, how as teams we can't compete against each other, and it was about using scientific thinking for improvement.
Okay.
A lot of PDSA, like list your experiment, here's our next step. But it was basically a deck of cards, and they had to sort it
Okay.
as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Each time they had to measure themselves.
Yeah.
And I had two teams, and they naturally started competing against each other.
Yeah, it's natural.
But I never said compete. And then the last challenge, right, was as a group, our time cannot exceed this much. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, well, we've been, and they've been sharing things, but at the beginning it was all superficial sharing. It was all things that they're like, here, we're going to share some of this, but the real stuff, right?
Yeah.
But once we change it to say, okay, now, in order for us to get the prize, both teams have to come. It's under a certain
collaboration and has to be seamless.
And they're like, what do you mean? I go, well, if you guys don't share what really works with the other team and vice versa, that means both of you are not going to get the item. And so this is where they had to make an adjustment. And they're like, what do we do?
What did you do?
They spent a lot more time talking. Well, this was very interesting in human nature. They then started dictating to the other team. The one that was doing better started dictating to the other team what to do better.
Here we go. Because they had the reputation, thus the influence.
But when you think of it as a system, right, they had different components. They had different attributes. People within their team had different strengths and weaknesses compared to what was in their team.
Okay.
But they didn't look at it that way.
Yeah.
They looked at it like they were a carbon copy of their team.
That sounds familiar.
Right. So when I, as a facilitator in that, I would ask some of these questions. I go, well, who, person A, who's person A on your team? Right. And they're like, what do you mean? But they didn't see it that way. Right. And they see it like, no, you guys, and then they were very front, like we don't have the same skills as you, or we don't. And then, okay, then they started asking probing questions. What are you guys good at? Right. And we actually spent a lot of time starting now to actually collaborate instead of the superficial collaboration that was taking place beforehand.
Oh, wow.
So
Nice.
it was creating that environment. And that goes back to, the different components working together to the aim of the system as opposed to competing against each other.
What was the effect in your workplace afterwards?
Well, I got a really question afterwards was, okay, this training was great, but what next?
Because often when we leave a room, that frame of the door tends to flush all the new concepts that we learn.
Yeah, well, luckily, this is, I told him I'm not here by day, gone by night. Like I was just like, I'll be here tomorrow. Right. But we sat down and got through it, and we had individual conversations after. There's some things that I look back in it and wish I could do it better as well, right? Especially some follow-ups. A few weeks later, I would have loved to have done a debrief. I didn't do that kind of stuff, but this is part of my own things to evolve, right? But it was a powerful exercise in the case where, are we looking at, again, decorating the fish or not? Is it superficial knowledge transfer, or is it they're actually caring about it? And one of the ways you can tell, I find, is how they share information.
What was the name of the exercise? If any?
It's not Toyota. Kata in the Classroom.
Kata in the Classroom.
Yeah, Kata in the Classroom, and it's all open source.
Okay.
From Mike, and
I'll add the link.
Yeah, he's. I love following him on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot because I find a lot of the communities on there, and they're sharing quite a bit, especially at conferences. Yeah. There.
Yeah, Toronto conference, a lot of Twitter stuff. Totally different culture than here in Quebec.
Yeah.
Here, nobody tweets it.
No. It's funny because, like, you go there, and there's a lot of people work in the banks.
Yeah, it's true.
And they all, and even the organizers or the sponsors there were all banks.
Really?
Most of all big banks were there.
Really?
And it was fun because, like, one guy's like, yeah, I was working there like a couple months ago. Now he's in this one, right? And they're just saying it. And when I've been to Agile Tour, like, I didn't get that same sense. Yeah. Like when I go to some of the events here, I don't have that same sense that we're just interchanging. Like, I know there's quite a few, we have Desjardins, Bell,
National Bank, Hydro. I've started sucking up the market a little bit. Yes.
I've seen some, even SAQ has
SAQ.
So some change, especially like with their mobile app. I've been actually pretty impressed with what they've been developing, and I don't know who works there. I'd love to know what they're doing.
Yeah, I use it all the time.
Yeah. But just their recommendations, the ease of use, the way that they're releasing things. Yeah. Like this is a company a couple of years ago which I hated, right? In the fact that I just felt they were taking us for granted, they were gouging us. Like But now I've seen the prices go down. Okay. Right. And like I'm love using their app.
Yeah. I use it on a regular basis for sure.
Right. I don't know who's working there, but are they using Agile? Are they using Agile coaches? Not that I have known.
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah. They could.
Who knows? Robert, how do you want to wrap this up?
Oh, I don't know.
We've covered a lot of ground. Especially systems thinking is a huge subject. Somebody that wants to know more, can they come and get in touch with you?
For sure.
How?
Well, I got an email address.
LinkedIn,
Twitter.
Robert. Well, your name is going to be on the podcast anyways, but Robert Pragai.
For Twitter, it's Robert Pragai.
Yeah.
Like email is robpragai@gmail.com.
Gmail.com. Yeah.
LinkedIn.
I don't know, maybe a coffee or just the exchange of emails and what books you recommend, so on and so forth. Because it's a humongous subject.
Yeah, so things where I recommend people to start reading.
Yeah.
So look at Russell Acuff, the videos. Like just search Russell Acuff videos.
There's tons online.
Unbelievable. Even like there's one about him giving a TED Talk, like how he would be. And he has humor. He has just a great personality. When it comes to Deming, I just be careful with Deming. Okay. The best stuff about Deming are actually books about Deming and not the ones he read.
He wrote,
sorry.
Yeah.
But I still recommend like the New Economics, the 3rd edition. Highly, I would stay not away, but just hold off on Out of the Crisis. It's a bit more dry, but I'd read The Goal by Eli Goldratt.
Which book did you bring at the first meetup?
I bring a ton.
But the one that you said this is the one you have to start with. Was it the goal? Maybe
There's
not.
the goal. There's Peter Schultz, the Leadership Handbook.
Might have been the goal. I don't remember.
The goal is the original, the Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
So think about the Phoenix. 30 years before that, the goal.
Okay.
And I've read it 4 or 5 times now, and each time, based on my experience, I see new things.
You read it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's the goal. There's also Mary and Peter Papa. They wrote the stuff on software development.
Mary Poppendick.
Yeah.
Lean software development.
Yeah. There's a lot of system thinking in that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right? It's stuff to look at.
There's obviously Peter Senge,
right? The fifth discipline.
That's right.
But I would, the leadership handbook is a good way.
Good start. Yeah.
It's a good start. But one of the differentiations that I would look at is with system thinking, you can go a lot into more the theoretical, the more academic stuff. When I refer to system thinking, it's within an organization, and that's the thing that I would recommend to people is stick with the organization stuff.
Yeah.
Think, read stuff by Russell Acuff, by Senge, but also if you like videos, you would watch that. And the first thing is just start being aware. I do also do mentoring.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I have a mentor.
Okay.
I think it's vital for us.
Who's your mentor if you don't?
Bill Bellows.
Bill Bellows, yeah.
Yeah, I meet with him once a month.
Okay.
And what a fascinating individual! Like who he's interacted with, all these people that I've talked about.
Where is he based?
He's out of California.
Oh my. Okay, so mentoring is done by phone.
Yeah,
video
we
chat.
do FaceTime.
FaceTime, yeah.
All right, and he's met my whole family because we'll do it at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. So my kids are like, "Hey!" And
so you've seen the peanut butter wars.
He's seen the peanut butter wars. Yeah, no, peanut butter is big in my family. But yeah, no, I do that. I started helping out this lady just out of university.
Okay.
She asked. I met with her for breakfast the other day. I think it's important to give back, to share. I learn from it as well. It's a passion of mine that I want to do even when I retire is to teach.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. It really gets me going.
That's good.
As opposed to just sitting there watching TV.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
It was fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I'm missing words right now, but I just want to also say thank you, and this has been an amazing experience.
Fun.
And
we're at 2 hours, man.
Oh shit! Sorry. What time is it? This is the thing.
It's almost 9.
Oh no. Yeah. Well, this is. Just imagine if you had Chris here.
Oh my! Then the neighbors would complain.
No. He like. Have you spoken to like Martin or Fernando or those?
Not recently. No.
Todd.
No, not recently.
So
no.
Todd.
They're all based in Ontario and Toronto, and we're so busy here in Montreal. It's not even funny.
What's interesting with that group is there really. They're talking about the evolution of Agile and where it's going.
Todd gave the keynote, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the best part of his speech was how many developers are here in the room.
Oh, probably none.
Out of the 1,163, there was 5.
Yeah. Poor developers.
Oh, that's the thing. We're doing all this.
I mean, we developers started the adoption of this Agile Scrum stuff, and now they seem to be out of the loop.
It reminds me of the project management PMP evolution.
Okay.
Right, just in the sense that it went away from the team aspect and went away from that subject manager who was then just elevated to that project manager because they oversaw. Now it became its own profession.
Yeah.
And now that's what we're doing with.
Absolutely. So what's your takeaway from Todd's keynote?
It comes back to the earlier conversation that we had, right? I don't believe agile. I don't believe agile. The concept that we were talking about before is dead, because that's human nature. I just think what we know as it, like, and how we label it is just like a product launch is going through its cycle. And something else will come up. But as long as we adapt and we focus on the right behaviors and the right interactions and consistency of purpose, we'll be okay.
That's nice. That's a nice way to end it. Thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Bonne soirée.